I'll be speaking for a while, so do sit in any position which is comfortable for you for listening. And the talk that I'll be speaking about is the awakening of the Bodhi heart, which Bhante gave in 1969. So the pattern of the evening is that I will share my thoughts about this talk. We'll hear Bhante speaking a couple of times a bit later on in the talk, and then have a period of reflection, of personal reflection, then the tea break, and then we'll have a period of meditation. And just to remind you that this talk fits into the pattern of the themes that we're looking at over this period of Sangha night. So the themes are awakening, spiritual community, altruism, and passing it on. So awakening is moving towards the ultimate state of awakening, but we could also say it's going deeper. It's our progress on the path. Spiritual community is about creating a community of practitioners based on friendship and based on metta. Altruism, helping people to express the altruistic dimension of their Dharma practice. And passing on Triratna's lineage of teaching, practices, and responsibilities. So this talk is in the category of altruism, but actually, as I was preparing it, I thought, well, it could fit any one of those four categories. So it's very central to our practice. And I'll say a few things before directly engaging with the talk. So listening to Bhante speak on the subject for over an hour, it just brought back to my mind what he has given us, what he has passed on to us, because it is through Bhante that we have received the Dharma, we have received Buddhism, we have received the traditional teaching which has been handed down over the centuries. Mm-hmm. So the lineage coming directly from the Buddha, through teachers down through all that period of time, coming to Bhante's teachers in the last century, and now actually through him coming to us. And one of the themes I think within this talk is the preciousness of the opportunity which we have, the very preciousness of having the Dharma, the preciousness of being able to go deeper in our spiritual experience and move into those dimensions of experience which were envisioned by the Buddha and then actually clarified and modified over the centuries. So it's important, it's really important. And of course, what Bhante did, as those teachers did in their times, was to shape those truths, those profound truths, in relation to that particular culture, that particular period of history, that particular period of time. So for us, well, in a way, it felt like initially the Western world, although Triratna and Bhante's teaching spread across the whole world, and also in the 20th and now the 21st century. So we are part of all of that and have a deep wish for that to continue into the future and to play our part as well as we can in that happening. And thinking back about my own experience, I wasn't part of the very earliest generations of order members. And the generations who were around Bhante, just a small number knew him really well, but I actually and Vajradevi were ordained on the same retreat in 1995, and we were the generation which still heard Bhante speak a lot, went to his talks, travelled, we'd really travelled to hear Bhante, to hear one of those talks, also went to some of his seminars as part of them. And it was we also had the excitement of those early days and the excitement of his presence. And you might have been in London when when he gave the Vimalakirti series, I don't know, but which is another very exciting series as the Bodhisattva ideal is. But people told me, Dharmacharis told me about the excitement they felt before driving some distance in London to hear those talks, because you didn't know what he was going to say. It was like the next episode. And in a way, we've become familiar with those teachings, and that's great. But actually that freshness, that newness, gosh, I'm hearing this for the first time. Just as followers of the Buddha, those meeting the Buddha, suddenly heard something for the first time. So that holds the value of what was being said. But what they said, those Dharmacharis, was excited before they went. And on the way home, every evening, they always got lost. I think in some cases they ended up in the North Circular or something like that. So, but it got lost because they were so involved with what they heard, probably talking about it, and their consciousness had been altered in some way. So we're talking, and can still talk about a lively, vibrant, spiritual tradition of the Dharma. So this talk is a lecture. It's part of a whole series. So there's a lot on the subject of the awakening mind, on the rising of the Bodhicitta, which isn't in this particular talk. And I'd really recommend the book in which it's published, The Bodhisattva Ideal. This is a very good book. The chapters are longer than the lectures, there's more in them, and you get the whole vision here. And I know that people doing literary study often buy this book as well. And in a way, I talked about the excitement of the lectures, but actually there was the excitement of the new book as well. The new book coming from Bhante, you always just bought it. There's never a decision whether to buy it or not. So before I get on to the talk, I just want to say something about the background. The talk is on the arising of the awakening mind, the awakening of the Bodhi mind. So what we might talk about as the arising of the Bodhicitta. And that teaching and that experience arose in the Mahayana tradition. So we're talking about the period of Buddhism that arose about 500 years after the Buddha's death, so near to the turn of the last millennium, the beginning of the last millennium. And it happened at a time when, well, 500 years had passed since the Buddha's parinirvana. So there was no longer that direct, immediate contact with the presence of the Buddha, just the very being of the Buddha and his teaching. And things had become more kind of standardized and ossified over some of the later years following that, as can happen if religious traditions aren't renewed and kept alive. So it was ready for change and more development. And also society had changed. There was far more trade. You know, India had a silk route to China. So the world vision had expanded. And also people were literate. So there was also the written word rather than the oral tradition. So the distinctive features of the Mahayana, just to list them briefly, is that the disciples of the Buddha were not just the monks. It wasn't just the monastic tradition, but the laity were also recognized as spiritual practitioners. You have that breadth, that complete breadth. It introduced us very explicitly to the doctrine of emptiness or shunyata, what we all know every time we recite the Heart Sutra. If things are impermanent, if all things are insubstantial, then emptiness or shunyata is a description of that lack of any fixity in anything. So it introduced that as a teaching. And then also what we're going to respond to more this evening, the arising of the Bodhicitta and the figure of the Bodhisattva. And also the emergence of the archetypal Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So figures like Green Tara, Amitabha, Avalokiteshvara, their profound qualities, their supreme qualities, the beauty actually of that unfolding vision. So this is the context in which the awakening mind and the Bodhi mind was being described and experienced. And these things were present in the Pali Canon, but but I don't think we have so much access to how it was experienced, actually, in that intensity, which also declined once the Buddha himself wasn't there. But all of this is implicit in the Buddha's teaching. And that Mahayana breadth of vision and the fact that people could write and read opened up to expressing the Dharma through poetry, metaphor, imagination, beauty. And of course, this was all very expansive, because what was rising in India spread to China, to Japan, eventually to Tibet. So that broadening and sort of redefining, well, one could say deepening, but or bringing out the true depth. So, coming on to the lecture. So this is entitled The Awakening of the Bodhi Heart. And Bodhi itself means spiritual awakening, often translated as enlightenment. And the being that awakes is the Bodhisattva. And this is about a manifestation within us of the transcendental. And it's what we often call the arising of the Bodhicitta. So it's going beyond the narrowness of ordinary, mundane experience to what is, we could say, is higher or deeper or beyond, but still part of the range of experience accessible to humanity. You know, there, if we can discover it, if it can be revealed to us. So in terms of the bodhicitta, there's the absolute bodhicitta, which is absolute reality beyond time and space. And then there is what Bhante is talking about and what we wish to engage with particularly, which is the relative bodhicitta. The bodhicitta as it manifests in the world, manifests in our experience, the arising, the awakening of the Bodhi heart. And Bhante describes it as an active force at work, which can, and it can feel, he says, as though it has a kind of cosmic will, power about it. And it is, in a way, I think, what we've glimpsed, longed for, moved towards. So the word chitta can be translated in various ways. It can be translated as thought, emotion, or volition. But what Bhante is very clear about, what is arising here, if you're talking about people being affected, touched, transformed by the transcendental, it's not our personal thought, it's not my emotion, it's not my volition. It's not part of our psychophysical organism. This is something beyond, higher, lower, deeper than that. And so, if you're familiar with these terms, it's not part of the 5 skandhas which make up our ordinary being. So it's not part of form, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness. So what Bhante describes it as is the manifestation, even the eruption within us of something transcendental, and it orientates our whole existence. I'll read that again. The manifestation, even the eruption within us of something transcendental, and it reorientates our whole existence. And this is possible for us. He also emphasizes it's not separate individual experiences. He would say, no, it's not, so there's my bodhicitta and your bodhicitta and Bhagavad-gita's bodhicitta and Lucy's bodhicitta. It's not like that. He says there is only one bodhicitta. Okay, so this larger, greater, vaster presence beyond that. And to quote him again, he also brings out, this is something that we share. Your bodhicitta is my bodhicitta, and my bodhicitta is your bodhicitta, he says. So were it to arise in this room this evening, and amazingly, of course, also on Zoom, it would be, I don't know, it would be Jackie's bodhicitta and Lucy's bodhicitta and Abhayanara's bodhicitta and Carolyn's bodhicitta, and it would be one bodhicitta. And in a way, it would be vaster than what is in this room, vaster than what has very fortunately contacted it also on Zoom. And the image that Bhante gives for this, or he draws on for this, it's a very familiar image in the Mahayana, it's a very familiar image in Japanese Buddhism, is that the bodhicitta is like the full moon reflected in different bodies of water. Okay, so there's only one full moon, but it's like they're separate pools with their own reflection of the full moon. So it's like that. And the Mahayana, because it's poetic, because it has words, has so many different similes for the bodhicitta, just reach out, trying to grasp what it is, and it's like this, and it's like that, and it's like that beautiful thing. And, you know, one image after another image after another image as well in many of the sutras. So, sort of hearing this, speaking about it, contemplating, one can think, oh, this is marvelous, it's very wonderful, but actually, can I do this? Is this really about me and my practice? And of course it is. It is. It is possible for us. And there's a part in the chapter in the book, which has the same title as this lecture and contains this lecture, there's an extra part where Bhante says here, what he says elsewhere as well, the arising of the bodhicitta is in effect equivalent to stream entry. So you may be more familiar with the term stream entry, which means that you have entered the stream of the Dharma and reached a point where you will not turn back. Might be over lifetimes, but whatever happens, you can't give it up. You can't turn back from having reached this point in this lifetime. And then more progress will come towards awakening, but in a way, awakening is guaranteed. So to say the arising of the bodhicitta is equivalent means that it can happen in us, and it will deepen and deepen, but it can arise. So this isn't just to talk about a sort of remote, magical, wonderful experience. It is talking about what can happen for us and where our practice can lead, where our practice is leading. And Bhante says that this is also, well, so I'll start that again. Bhante says that the arising of the bodhicitta is possible for us because it connects with something that is also deep within us. And he calls it an inner kinship with awakening. There is deep within us an affinity with this truth, with the nature of reality. So it's beyond the collective, he says, although the collective could be like setting the scene for it. It's not just that, it's even more than that. And Bhante elsewhere offers what is his more personal perspective on the bodhicitta, which is that he thinks it's more likely still to arise within a collective situation. And that's part of his vision for the Triratna movement, that we gather, and to use the words of the Buddha, actually, we gather in large numbers, because that is where something happens. And the rising of the bodhicitta is like, oh yes, something happens, something is happening. And again, something perhaps about the strength of our collective practice enables this transcendental experience, this expansion of our humanity to take place. And this, of course, is where we go beyond the narrowness of a kind of fixed self. So we're not abnegated by the experience, we're kind of enlarged, enriched by the experience. We're nobler beings, we're nobler as who we are. And I do think we have glimpses of this. You know, we might glimpse it meditating with others, might glimpse it in ritual, something might happen in a study group one evening. We might be working with others on a Dharma project, you know, renovating a building, looking after the garden, and that collective effort and devotion and integrity and giving, and something could happen. And I think we do get glimpses. This is more significant. It's as if the boundaries of our being are becoming thinner. And there might be a shift in the atmosphere. We're inspired, something happens. So we're practicing for the benefit of all beings. The arising of the Bodhicitta is ultimately to become a bodhisattva and to practice for the benefit of all beings. So again, it's not about my awakening, my enlightenment. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. So we practice for the benefit of everyone. And the highest vision is to bring them also to awakening. But Bhante elsewhere is actually very clear that this is about any act of kindness. It says what those beings need at the time. Maybe the other person at the center, maybe the person you pass in the street, maybe your family, complete stranger. It's the opportunities to practice kindness, metta, compassion is how we work for the benefit of all beings. And we grow spiritually through doing that, and we benefit others. Okay, so I've said quite a lot. So let's just listen to Bhante talking about what the titles he gives this section, How Does the Bodhicitta Arise?
A further question arises for our consideration, to which we now have to turn. All right, we've understood what a bodhisattva is. We've understood how one becomes a bodhisattva through this arising within one of this glorious bodhicitta. But the question which arises is, how does the bodhicitta itself arise? How does it come to manifest itself within us? And this is a very mysterious matter. It's a very deep, a very dark, and a very difficult matter. The Mahayana Sutras supply one of their unfailing similes. They say that the arising of the bodhicitta within us is like a blind man finding a priceless jewel on a dunghill at night. This is what the arising of the bodhicitta within us is like. It's so wonderful. It's so unexpected. I mean, who would think that a blind man just poking his way around a dunghill in the middle of the night would find a priceless jewel? So in the same way, who would have thought that in our case, living as we are in the midst of the world, earning our living, doing our jobs, raising our families, going along to meditation classes once a week, who would have thought that in us this bodhicitta should ever have arisen? So this is the sort of comparison, this is the sort of simile that the Mahayana Sutras give. But wonderful as it is, unexpected as it is, the arising of the bodhicitta is not altogether, in fact not at all, a matter of chance. Is one of the general, most fundamental principles of Buddhist thought, Buddhist philosophy, that whatever arises in the world, in the universe, at any level, arises in dependence on causes and conditions. Not by chance. Not as a result of fate. not as a result of the will of God, but in dependence upon natural, and even the supernatural is natural, causes and conditions. And this applies also to the arising, in the sense of the manifestation, the breaking out, the breaking forth of the Bodhicitta within us, the emergence of the Bodhicitta within us. That event, that phenomenon, depends upon the creation of certain mental and spiritual conditions. And these mental and spiritual conditions, in dependence upon which the Bodhicitta can manifest itself within us, these conditions we can create within ourselves. And when we create them, the Bodhicitta will then arise.
So that image of finding a jewel in a dunghill, well, suggests it's a very, very rare opportunity in the whole range of lived experience for the Bodhicitta to be able to arise. But of course, we have met the Dharma. We do have this opportunity. It is possible for us to do it. And then the very important emphasis really is it will arise on the basis of conditions, it will arise on the basis of how we live our lives, of how we practice. We can create the conditions for it to arise. And Bhante does say, don't bother to think about becoming bodhisattvas, but really think about creating the conditions for it to be a bodhicitta to arise. So he emphasizes preparation, and in the rest of the Bodhisattva ideal text, he also, gives several chapters to describing the paramitas, which are the ways of practice that encourage the bodhicitta to arise, and gives them quite a lot of detailed attention. They're familiar, they're things that we can do: giving, uprightness or ethics, patience, vigor or virya, meditation and wisdom. And he also mentions the two traditional ways that are said to support the arising of the bodhicitta. And these are Vasubandhu's 4 factors, and they are practicing the 7-fold puja based on the Bodhicharyavatara by Shantideva. So I want to emphasize the 7-fold puja here because that is our practice. That's what we do. That's what we do in this room. Vasubandhu's 4 factors are also interesting and relevant and good areas of contemplation. But I think it's really important that he emphasizes the 7-fold puja. And we're going to listen to him saying a little bit about that. And then he does have short sections where he talks about each of the sections of the 7-fold puja, which tonight we're not going to listen to. It could be something interesting to engage with on another night sometime. But it's good when we do that ritual to appreciate its significance and of it as a force for transformation, what we're actually participating in there when we go through those different stages of spiritual action and experience, and do it again in our lives, in special places like this place, is deeply, deeply important. So we should never take it for granted, and we should really honor that. And I think one of my missions really, but I think it'd be really good to talk about ritual more and to talk about 7-fold puja more, and actually how that can have a profound effect on our spiritual development. Okay, so I'd like to listen to the bits about the 7-fold puja, so let's just appreciate that. So we'll just listen to that and then we'll stop. Yeah.
Now, there are 2 ways of doing this. One way is associated with the name of Shantideva. The other way is associated with the name of Vasubandhu. And both are great Indian teachers, great Indian masters of the Mahayana, Shantideva in the 7th, Vasubandhu probably in the 4th centuries AD, and both of them are traditionally recognized as being themselves bodhisattvas. And their two methods, though different, are, we may say, complementary and can even be combined. Shantideva's method is, frankly, more devotional, and it's known as Anuttara Puja, or supreme worship, if you like, supreme adoration even. It consists in a series of what we may describe as 7 spiritual exercises, or we may speak of these exercises as being expressive, each of them, of a certain phase of the religious consciousness. And when we go through externally certain ceremonies, or even certain recitations, corresponding to these different phases of the religious consciousness, then the supreme worship is known as the sevenfold worship, with which, of course, we are quite familiar, inasmuch as it's this sevenfold puja or sevenfold worship that we recite every Friday evening after our lecture, before we disperse. But though we perform externally, though we recite with our lips, we must always recollect that the supreme worship, even the sevenfold puja, is essentially a sequence of devotional and spiritual moods and experiences, which between them pave the way for the experience of, the manifestation of, the arising of the Bodhicitta. Now, many of you are familiar with the supreme worship. Many of you are familiar with the sevenfold puja, have joined us in reciting it here in this very room. But for the benefit of those who are new to it, those who perhaps haven't participated in it ever before, let me just very briefly go through these 7 items. First of all, there's what we call...
And of course, the development of those 7 parts of the sequence culminates in the transference of merit and self-surrender, which is an expression again of the Bodhisattva ideal, of the wish to give everything away for the benefit of all beings. Okay, so we've had quite a lot of words. On retreats, after we've given a talk, on retreats at Taraluka, we usually just sit in silence for just a very few minutes, because otherwise it's just words and it goes into other words about what we might be doing. So let's just pause, sit with your eyes closed, or you might wish to have your eyes open and look at the shrine, but just stay with anything which has well, affected you in any way about, well, what I have been able to convey of Bhante's teaching. And we're in a place of significant spiritual practice, a place where things can happen. So I thought that we could end with a period of personal reflection. And this is about times when you may have felt or glimpsed that there is something more in experience, something deeper, a richer dimension, or that feeling that something happened there. And this, well, it's likely to arise more in your Dharma life, but could arise anytime, and may also have been the kind of thing that prompted you to be a seeker, to come along to the center, to look for more, to look for something deeper and truer. So it might be, within our practice, something that happened in meditation or ritual, the sort of examples I was giving before, like working with others. Could be being affected by the beauty of an image or a rupa. Maybe just being more deeply within a particular experience, maybe with nature. Maybe just feeling that, this is more than the simple fixed ways of looking at things. Maybe some interaction of kindness, of warmth, of friendliness, when some of those boundaries softened, you were moved. So just see if you have something like that in your experience. If nothing arises, and that can also happen just when you're suddenly asked to think about something, then, you could just think of any sort of true, meaningful experience, somewhere where you felt faith, actually. Somewhere where you felt faith. And it's also absolutely fine just to sit in this space and experience the richness of the room and the richness of all of us being together. Okay, so I'll leave you to reflect on that for a few minutes, and then I'll just drop in a second area of reflection as well. And then you can just drop in the question, how might this kind of experience deepen for me? How might this kind of experience deepen for me? And if answers arise, we could just imagine, what would that be like? What would that be like? And so gently beginning your reflection to a close.